Welcome to Swiss Army Sages.
Morning, everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about friendship. It's a big subject that isn't talked about a lot these days. And we're going to be focusing on what it means to be a friend and why it's important to have friendships. And also, I think that we should spend some time on talking about skills that not only help develop a friendship in the beginning, but can really help create fruitful friendships.
Like techniques or something?
Techniques.
Yeah.
Everything from meeting people, realizing when you vibe with someone, because it's hard to vibe with somebody. You usually don't vibe with somebody right away, right when you meet them. So when you do vibe with someone, that should be like a little indicator in your mind. Hey, maybe I should develop a relationship with this person.
Yeah, I would be a little cautious about someone who is trying to vibe with you.
Oh,
off the bat.
Don't you kind of pick up on that? Like,
not everyone, because if
yeah.
everyone did, they wouldn't be doing it.
Or if some people are like, they're wanting that, that ego stroke. So because they're looking for an ego stroke, automatically, when someone plays on that ego stroke, they just soak it up.
Yeah.
This isn't something that we want to rush through because, although we don't think about it a whole lot, relationships and friendships are probably one of the most fundamental aspects of social existence for humans. Sure, you always have the monk, the hermit, that doesn't want to interact with anybody. So personality does have something to do with it too.
Yeah, I've met quite a few people that consider themselves introverts, but after spending time with them, they're not really introverted. They are insecure, and they're insecure about people. And actually, the people that have done this the most are the people that try to be as agreeable as possible, may lie just to agree with you. Whenever I see that, I don't do it too much anymore because it really makes them mad, but you'll just make up some kind of interesting fact that's total BS. When they start agreeing with you, you're like, I just made that up.
That reminds me of a story where
that makes them mad, though.
That reminds me of a story when I was in junior.
Don't do it.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story at junior high where I did that and it completely backfired. I'll tell that story later on. But when I was driving over, I was thinking about something that I wanted to say because this has a lot to do with the reason why we're doing this podcast. So in life, I've found that there are certain truths that we haven't learned yet about existence.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And
they're all within us. My own personal belief is that all the truths of everything is locked somewhere inside of us. It's like you could say it's a puzzle, or I guess a puzzle would probably be the best analogy, but what helped me come to that conclusion was a story, a YouTube story that I watched. I'll tell you about that later too. Yeah.
Yeah, so when there's a truth in existence that we're not aware of, and it has something to do with our situation, our life situation that we find ourselves in, what usually happens is we experience some kind of discontent all the way to severe suffering. And we don't know why, because we're not aware of the truth of that dynamic. I know this sounds really complicated, but I'm going to give you an example. So there was a time when you and me were really, really close. We were living together, and we were hanging out every single day. All our weekend leisure time was done together. And then one day you announced you're leaving for the Army.
Right.
And then, it came and you left, and I was so depressed.
Yeah.
But I didn't know why. I didn't know why, because I hadn't discovered the truth about the situation yet. So I was in discontent, and that discontent can sometimes be the catalyst for seeking out and working through your own mind and your life situation in order to find the truth that allows a change in perspective that eases the suffering, or sometimes just dissipates the suffering altogether.
Yeah, as long as you're honest with yourself. There's two schools of thought. There's there's the victim mentality, and I think the victim mentality gets a bad rap, maybe because it's overused and it's abused, I think, in society today. But there's the idea that the situations we are in are by our own making. And then there's the situation I am in is because of someone else. I'm where I am because of someone else. But I think most people, if you can retrace your steps of how you got to where you are, you'll find that you walked yourself right into the situation that you're in. Almost every time. I think victims of circumstance and victims of another person, without walking into the situation, are far and few between. Random. Because if you become a friend with someone who is actually there to take advantage of you, you got yourself, and you probably saw a few of the warning signs and forgave them.
There's also the whole thing of being naive. Right. that you always want to believe the best in people, because I fall prey to that. Yeah,
but being naive, it also gets a bad rap, because it's not foolish to be naive. You could say naive is allowing someone to fool me once, shame on you. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with giving someone one chance. You don't have to, most people, you don't have to give them a second chance. If you're going to give someone a second chance, it has to be someone that you've been close with for a long time. Oh, which brings in the prisoner's dilemma. If no one's heard of the prisoner's dilemma, it's a very good thing to think about, because every relationship that you are in with anyone, period, falls into at least the three main categories of the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay, well,
every single one.
Let's save that.
And it goes with do you forgive someone twice?
Okay.
And why you would, and why you shouldn't.
Yeah. So the situation that I was talking about, I had to work through that to figure out the truth of my situation in order to be fine with you not being around anymore. And I did. I worked it out. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think that when it comes to friendship, that's something where we have a source of a lot of joy and happiness, but we might not realize that such a big part of our social relationship part of our life, so much of our joy and happiness comes from relationships. And if they're not good, and if they're not fruitful relationships, then we're going to be experiencing a lack, unless you're that one type of personality that is more content by yourself and prefers to be by yourself. But I don't really know if that's really someone who's doing that, if they're really experiencing joy, or if they're just kind of like in denial. Because I'm not like that. So how do you really get into the mind of someone like that?
Yeah, it's not it's not far-fetched to say that there is a personality type that is a solitary personality type. I think it is very rare. I think most solitary people have been defeated in life, and they have retreated into solidarity. I think that most people that are solitary, that are
hermits. Just say hermits.
Hermits. Most people that are hermits, or have retreated from society, have been let down by society. Their expectations have been let down.
Yeah. So that's something that I kind of want to set the stage with. Now, for people that really believe that they're happier by themselves without relationships and without friends, they prefer to not have anything to do with anybody except for maybe their dog or cat. We want to hear from you. So please send us a message, send us a comment and your opinion, because we're only speaking from our perspective and we can't see maybe a fruitful part of not having any friends and just going throughout this world by yourself.
Yeah.
So we do want to hear from you.
I've had lots of friends in my life, but maybe I haven't because they're nowhere to be found. You know?
Well,
I'm in a situation now where one of my goals I have a queue list of goals, a priority list of goals, and somewhere down from a few of the most priority goals that I have is to make new friends. You know?
Yeah. Let's take it back, because I want to talk about today's social landscape with friends and relationships. Everything from your buddies of both sexes to dating, right? But let's take it back. Let's take it back like 15 years. I think we need to take it back before social media, so we can talk about the change in relationships, which is a huge change in relationships when the smartphone came out, social media, the internet changed everything. So 20 years ago, the phone was to call. You're not emailing your friends. The phone's to call.
You're not texting, but not
texting much.
Yeah, it's not like it is right now.
Yes.
I was texting 20 years ago, but it was 20 years ago. Yeah, is when I first started texting, about early 2000s. But it wasn't anything like it is today.
Yeah, so most of the interaction between friends 20 years ago was either long phone conversations, could be up to 2-hour phone conversations.
Mm-hmm. I remember those.
Or it was...
I missed those.
Going over to your house, or you're coming over to my house, or we're going somewhere together, and it's either going to be you and me, or it's going to be the whole group, anybody that wants to go. And I would say that at least 10 hours out of the week was spent in that kind of interaction.
Well, there's a piece of advice, or there's something that I would hear people my age say. I'm 42. When I was in my 20s, even back then, and that is, it's harder to make friends the older you get. So hopefully during this conversation we can find out why.
Well, I think I know why.
Well, there's the obvious reasons. But
so with the change in technology, it kind of gravitated toward people hanging out, but now a lot of the interaction is moving to text. And when social media came out, moving to, I don't need to call up and ask, Jeanette how she's doing, because I can just go on her Facebook and find out what's going on in her life.
Yeah, look at the pictures she posts, look at the places she's been, and then check her check in on her in another couple of years and never say hi.
But people still would hang out, and they would even put events. Like we threw parties on Facebook. We would put an event,
MySpace.
party, MySpace, all that
Back
stuff.
then it was MySpace.
So, and now I go out, and of course, I'm not even going to talk about the COVID-19 lockdown thing, okay? Because
Well, I think just saying it that way says enough.
yeah, the COVID lockdown thing, obviously people aren't going out and going dancing and stuff, okay? So that was temporary. Hopefully it stays temporary. But I go out and I still see people hanging. I see groups of friends hanging together, whether it's at like a burger and beers or at the movies, or even I've been to a couple clubs and people are still out dancing and drinking. So that it's really a need that we have that we don't know, to be close in the same proximity as those who we admire and care about, which is still going on today, which is great.
Yeah, interestingly, I've seen it. I've seen that just driving around, like groups of kids hanging out, more now than probably 3 to 4 to 5 years before COVID. Like there is some kind of resurgence, and it's more, and so you have to ask the question: well, are there certain demographics that are kind of left out? I kind of feel like my demographic, and maybe it has something to do with it's harder to make friends as you get older. Why more people in their middle age aren't going out and doing the carefree meet and greets that we would do in our 20s.
Mm-hmm. So when you're a child, let's say under the age of 13, you're meeting people at school,
Mm-hmm.
and you're meeting people maybe on social media if your parents let you on social media. But I mean, that's another thing that I would like to hear some comments about, because our parents just like, oh yeah, meet whoever you want on your, let me set you up a Facebook page and your Instagram, and I know you're only 9, but meet whoever you want. And are parents doing that?
I would imagine that if you're a parent that has a child that's not old enough to use social media and is concerned about that, when your child is old enough, you will be able to find lots of other parents with children that are in the same age group. Different apps you can use to give restrictions to their phone. Different, rules and techniques that other parents have used. I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Let's just make a guess and say that children are meeting their friends mostly at school and extracurricular activities such as sports, church, things of that nature, and maybe a little bit on the internet. But for the most part, they're still meeting their friends in the traditional way, except that maybe this is more common in the city, but we used to meet our friends in the neighborhood.
Oh, on the street, yeah.
I see one kid a month out playing outside in my neighborhood, which is a totally suburban, regular neighborhood, here in Sacramento.
Yeah, I don't see that too much in this neighborhood either, or at my parents'. But I do see a lot of kids at the park. Every time I go to the park, there's kids playing at the park.
Yeah, usually supervised, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the interaction, because I think the interaction for adults, it's going to change. There is going to be some meeting online, and we'll get into that. But let's talk about the interaction, because even if you meet people online, some of those aspects still follow through. The interaction. So you meet someone, and we're going to have to kind of get to the center of this, because I think it's still unexplored in my own experience. Maybe you have more experience, but there's maybe a chemistry that is unconsciously going on between the two people. So let's just give you an example. You go to school, you sit down in class, it's first day of school, there's a guy sitting next to you, and he says hi.
Yeah, or he starts making small talk about the situation.
Yeah.
Right.
And that first initial contact was friendly. So it's kind of like a positive. So you're like in this positive playing field, whereas if he punches you in the arm, says, "Hey, I'm delaying, I'm going to make your life miserable," right? Then now that started in the negative, and there's going to be there's going to be tension. There's going to be a different outcome in that relationship. So it starts out positive, and then as you guys start interacting, you're not consciously doing this, but you're comparing all the things that are important to you to that person, all the things that you like and all the things that you dislike to that person. And we don't do it consciously. We do it unconsciously. And do you think that there's a chemistry and there's a evaluation of actions, or do you think it goes even beyond that and there's something spiritual going on?
Well, I believe that there is likely something spiritual going on, but if there's anything happening unconsciously, I would say it's the spiritual aspect, because although you're talking about the comparing thing and saying we do it unconsciously, just the fact that you can say that we do it, you have to kind of surmise that it's not completely unconscious, because if it was, you'd have no idea. You wouldn't even be able to say it right now. And I know what you're talking about. You're sizing the person up. And we say, sometimes if it's in a situation where you already have a friend group or a working at work, you have a work group, a work team, and there's a new member, you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to sizing them up. Or you might use the term, I was just sizing them up. So that unconscious thing, you're really just sizing them up. And I can't really say, oh yeah, I remember, well, there's this one time and I thought about, is this person this way? Is this person going to be interested in this or that? But I do feel like I can remember doing what you're talking about. I can say, oh yeah, I do that. So it's not really that unconscious. I think it's more one of those things where we do it and then we kind of forget about it. I cleaned my my house 2 weeks ago. Probably. It wasn't unconscious, just because I can't remember it.
With my childhood friends, everybody has their best friend, right? Isn't that kind of weird? Like almost everybody that I've ever met when they're a kid has had their best friend. They're always running around with their best friend. Yeah.
And, only time tells, because I'm sure that with your best friend, even there were times when you had a new friend that kind of took the place of your best friend, and then 2 years later your best friend is still around, and so in hindsight you can say, yes, this is my best friend. And there's times when I can say there were times in my life where I had a different best friend than my actual real best friend, because we weren't talking, we had a falling out, whatever. But my best friend from childhood is still my best friend right now. Right now, my best friend from childhood is still my best friend. He lives halfway across the country. We don't talk that much, but hands down, out of all the people outside of my family and most of the people inside of my family, if I needed to go to someone for help, he'd be there. And he knows I'd be there for him too, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I remember, I remember the connecting the bonds, or the bonds growing between my early friendships, what always came with like adoration. So they would do something that I really, really liked. Like with my first friend, we would completely play like with G.I. Joes or whatever we were playing with, and we would completely get into this like imaginary world with our toys. And
so good.
It was so
good.
It was so fun that, and I, not at the time I'm like, why do I like Richard so much? Why is he so cool? I'm not thinking any of that. I'm just like, I love Richard, right? He's my best friend.
I vaguely, I was like 5 years old. I think we moved away from Hayward when I was 6. I vaguely remember Richard. He was never mean to me though. So
yeah, he's a cool cat. So, and then with Sam, it was the same thing. We had so much fun together. The adoration came in the appreciation for the actions that we did together. So I think that's kind of like the reason, the initial reasons as children why we gravitate to a certain person, because the things that we're doing together are a lot of fun and joyful. And it's not so much like as you get older, we're like, oh, this person's really smart and has a good perspective. And we adore people for different reasons, or admire. I'm not going to say adore, I'm going to say admire. We admire people for different reasons as we get older.
On a side note real quick, the English language is incredibly practical, but we don't always use the definitions by the dictionary. And adore is perfectly fine to use.
Adore is usually like
right. So you don't want to do it, but from what you're trying to describe, there's no reason to not use the word adore with
a best friend,
with a best friend, or a person that you have a platonic relationship with. That's something that kind of gets me a little bit when you're trying to explain something and you use a word, yeah.
So then as our minds begin to develop and we start formulating a tremendous amount of abstract concepts, and those abstract concepts begin to form our beliefs about the world that we live in, even though at this time I think it's still unconscious. We're just thinking this is how the world is, but we don't realize that we decided that's how it is.
On a different subject, I would love to talk about this as a subject, the development of the abstract mind, the soul, the spirit, their relationship, what that is. And
I think that at this point, and it's like junior high, so it's 13, you start going through puberty.
Because your personality is being developed, not the built-in things about you. And when you're looking at a child, even at one, you say, oh, they have personality, but do they really? Or are they running on their basic instinct, their basic programming? And it's not really personality, it's just their basic programming. And then as abstract thought develops, you start to develop a personality that operates within the confines of your programming.
Yeah, and maybe like personality is just saying like the genetic makeup that is causing those instinctual behaviors. So the instinctual behaviors, we're saying it's personality, but really it's instinctual behaviors, and the reasons it's different in this child is because of the genetic makeup.
Yeah, and then you have two people who function instinctually similarly, but have different personalities because in their abstract growth and development, they develop different personalities, although they still operate within the same confines of their genetic makeup, or I would call it the spirit. On a spiritual level, I would say that's your spirit. Some people would say it's your higher self. I think spirit and soul is the best way to describe that. I do believe in a higher self, but way up there.
Yeah. Another time. So at the age of 13 on, even to adulthood, I would say that the concept or the factor of vibing, right? Vibing comes in. Like, I vibe with this person. We vibe, right? Comes into play. And, really vibe just comes from vibration, that we're on the same vibration. So whether it's, just purely physical things or physical chemistry, or maybe there's some kind of spiritual thing behind it, or your souls are similar. You just click with this person. You just click. You don't even think about it. You just click. And I think that's something that has a big important factor on the friendships that we develop from junior high all the way out through adulthood. Even though, like we talked about, in later adulthood, it seems like it's harder to make friends, right? And we're going to have to get into that. So let's move into adulthood. And why do we make friends? How do we make friends in adulthood? And what does that typically consist of? And because of what it typically consists of, why is it so difficult? And then, I know this is a lot, but how should it be? How should we be with our friends?
So like I said, I have a few goals that I have to complete before I feel like I'm in a place where I have the luxury of working on my goal of making new friends. But I already set the platform to do that. Like at work is where I interact with most people, but I don't hang out with anyone at work because I don't want to. I don't want to make friends right now. I have other things I need to do. But I set the environment to make friends. And you can be a friend to anyone. The easiest way to set the environment to where when I decide I want to start making friends, I already have fertile soil in my life with the people around me to do that, is always be willing to offer something for free. Something small, advice. And any time you give something small like that, never expect anything in return. And be willing to ask people for things. And anytime you ask for something from a person, always be willing to reciprocate whatever. Be willing to reciprocate. So if I have something that I'm working on in my life, and let's say it's and I had this conversation with a female coworker about turning my Jeep into like a camper kind of van, a sleepable vehicle. And so I'm asking her if she knows anything about it. I'm asking something from her. I'm asking her to give me her knowledge and her expertise on the subject. And even if she has nothing to offer, we can start discussing the ideas that we do have. And I'm getting that from her. I also have to be willing to give that back to her. When she has something that she's doing, she knows I've already asked her to give me something. And it's not like I owe her, but it makes her comfortable to ask me about something she might want advice on. And once that's given, with no real tally, with no real like who owes who, that's where real friendship is able to, the starting of it is. And it can be not just advice too, it could be physical labor or physical something, if you hear that one of your coworkers is moving, and I probably wouldn't do this, I don't have the time for it, but if you're like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm growing the environment, you offer to help them move and you don't expect anything in return. That's how you make friends. Or if someone, I work in healthcare, so there's a lot of ways that I can help other people do their work, and I do a lot of the CNA work when I can without asking. I don't ask for anything in return, and it creates a good working environment for me. I have a good working environment. My CNAs will do almost anything I ask for them because I'm always covering down where I can.
Do you think that a lot of what you're describing seems just like common courtesy of being a giving person?
That creates an environment to make a friendship, though. Mm-hmm. Because most of these people I'm very amicable with, and if I decided I wanted to cultivate that relationship more, I could. I mean, given constraints, I work with mostly female coworkers, very, very female workers, and so you also have to take into consideration the domestic situation they're in. I can't be like, hey, let's be friends, and they're like, Mom, you don't even want to ask. You don't want to impose if they have a boyfriend or a husband or something like that.
So at my last job, there's about 40 guys there, and the big challenge there was getting along with everybody, because whenever you have that many people, cliques start forming. So you have to be very careful not to get into one of the cliques, because if you get into one of the cliques, you can't be as good friends with the other cliques, because the cliques have their little
you're guilty by association.
They have their little tribal battles,
for
right?
Sure.
And this, it's a natural cultural construct in most environments where people get into cliques. There would be a lot of people in there that would be like, they would get betrayed by their work friends.
By their clique.
But no, they sometimes it'd be someone from a different clique, right?
But it was even worse when it was.
Well, here's the thing, right?
you have one of your own.
You have two people from two different cliques, but then they both get assigned to work together, so they learn how to be cordial because it benefits both of them,
right?
Because they're gonna have a nicer time at work, and while they're together, they're kind of like betraying their own cliques because they have to in order to get along with each other. But then, when they're not working together again, one of them gets burnt by the other guy. And that's when they're like, hey, you know what? Let me tell you something about work friendships. They're just that. They're work friendships. But I'm not going to be hanging out with these guys after hours drinking beers with them. You
start to realize who they are.
Yeah.
Who the ones that you can do that with,
So
it's not going to be everyone. I got a story about that, actually. When I was put on mission to, it was a training, year-long training to do my nursing through the military. Anytime you get put on mission, you have a brand new company, unless you mobilize with your company. But even then, you'll take on new people that are coming into your family, and the Army's great about that. So I'm leaving my unit, my company, to go form a brand new there's probably about 100 and something people all coming together from different parts of the country, and this is my family for the next year. And I had a goal, and it was to have a cordial relationship with everyone in that company. And by the time I left, I learned that not everyone is worth my friendship. And that goes for all the listeners too. Not everyone's worth your friendship.
Yeah. So the reason that I'm talking about this is because you were mentioning about how you set an environment at your workplace, and maybe you do this in life too, no matter where you're at, to where it's a fertile soil for friendships to develop. And when I think about my experience, like I was able to gain the respect of everyone there. And that meant a lot of the time not reacting to people when they did me wrong. When I heard that they were talking about me behind my back, to still be cordial and to not let that bother me and still be cordial, to show basically that I'm above that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna deal with that kind of stuff. I'm still gonna treat you respectfully, even if I heard that you say something behind my back.
Yeah, when you're at your work environment and there's cliques and there's people that have influence, regardless of the position they're in, they have social influence, they have charisma. You kind of gotta weigh your options. You kind of take some time if you hear that someone's talking trash. This is in life. Anytime you're in a situation where there's a lot of people, it could be a social group. It could be like a outdoorsy backpacking group that you're associated with, and it's a big group. There's cliques, and you hear someone's talking about, so someone's talking trash, whatever. Weigh the situation, because there's certain people that are talking trash about you, you're gonna react, and there's certain people where you have to say to yourself, if I react, what is this gonna do? If you try to enter into a trash talking conflict with someone that has far more influence than you, you got to be on your best game, because it's usually not going to go the way you want it to, and it's going to cause you a lot more problems than you want.
So, although the same as you said, I was able to create an environment where there was fertile soil for, relationships to develop, there was only really one person there that met all those criterias of the traditional friend, where when you're spending time together, you're admiring them. You're admiring their comedy. You're admiring the way they talk. You're admiring the way they believe about life. You guys are very similar. The higher intellectual things that are important to you are also important to them. And that's the only person that actually became a good friend, and really the only one I talk to now that I'm not there anymore. So I think that even if you have the right attitude in order to be able to easily meet new people and form good relationships, I still think that it's very, very rare. And that being said, when you do find that, do you think that it's important to nurture that?
Yeah. If you don't nurture a relationship, it usually goes away. One thing I would think about is if you're in a situation where you feel like you want to make new friends, I think it's important to ask yourself why. I want to make new friends because I enjoy fellowship. I enjoy hearing new ideas. I enjoy reveling in mutual successes. I enjoy hearing about the successes of my friends, and so it's a very wholesome and nurturing environment for me when I have friends, and so that's why I want to. And not just that, but it allows a canon for success if you have friends that you can have mutual a mutual celebration of your successes, then it encourages you to do things that are going to enrich your life. So that's me. That's why I want to. But it's important because if where I'm getting with this is, you got to be careful sometimes with people that are too ready to be your friend. And I've learned the hard way that entertaining a person that too readily wants to be my friend, the friendship ends with me at a deficit, and then saying that they're upset that like I took something from them, you know. So it's usually the person that is automatically interested in everything that you're interested in. Typically they'll have a one-up story. I don't think they realize that kind of irks the person that they're doing it to. Somehow they believe that it's gonna make, and you know, maybe it does pull some people into a friendship with them purely on trying to one-up them. But yeah, those kinds of people, you just gotta be careful about them.
We've talked before about people getting into less than beneficial romantic relationships simply because they don't want to be alone, or because they have not accepted themselves the way they are and they're looking for acceptance from others, and they'll put up with abuse in order to get that. Do you think that we can also fall prey to that type of thing in friendships?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you just mentioned the one person that's going to accept that person, that's like saying everything that they want to hear and doing everything they want to do. It seems to me like the person that hasn't completely accepted themselves, or is lonely, feeling alone, are going to be more susceptible to being used by that type of person.
It's a skill. Being able to figure someone out and what they want to hear is a skill. And the better a person is at that, the more vigilant the prey is going to have to be. So a person who's very, I don't want to say naive, but just doesn't have a lot of experience. It's hard to say. I don't know. All I can really say is that there are people that are better at it than others, and the people that are better at it are going to be able to trick the smarter people, or more aware people.
Do you think that the nature of our friendships change as we evolve individually?
I think no, I don't. I think that people become more guarded. People have more deal breakers as you get older. And I think that often people are quick to give themselves an excuse to not pursue a friendship because something happened that they can say, oh, falls in my category of deal breaking. And I honestly think that we haven't talked about the prisoner's dilemma, but every relationship falls under it, under one of the categories. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Fool me twice, you can't get fooled twice. Fool
me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Well, once you've been fooled, you can't be fooled again.
Nope. That was probably one of his best brain farts ever. George Bush Jr.
Yeah.
So fool me once, shame. I think that when a relationship is new, that's it. That's probably your best way to go. And you know what? You might accidentally steer out one of the better relationships. If you actually put this tool into place, you might steer out someone that actually did have a valid excuse for why they couldn't fulfill the promise or fulfill the expectation that they said they would. But you're gonna weed out far more people that are there to deceive you. You know what? If someone does something and they have a situational a situation that arose where, yeah, you helped them and they were going to help you back, but you helped them and now they can't help you back because of it, a situational thing. Okay. I usually give people a second chance. You know, it's usually the once it's shame on me, that's it. You know, once someone does something, they have an excuse. This is why I wasn't able to fulfill the part of my part of our friendship. I wasn't able to fulfill my part of our friendship because this thing got in the way. Okay, fine. That's when I'm like, that's it. That's your one chance. The next one it's it. You know, or I guess you get two chances. So you get one more chance and that's it. That's when you can start withdrawing your friendship from that person.
Well, what I mean is when we evolve and we change as people, which is another thing. We gotta at some point talk about where, like, you're in a relationship and you're growing and you change and become a better person, and then the other person's like,
they're not having it.
You changed. This is not what I signed up for, right? Well, we need to talk about that at some point. But let me just give you an example about this because I want to hear your opinion and I want to get this figured out. So let's take Joel in his early 20s. What's important to me? What's important to me is becoming a famous rock star. What's important to me is partying and just enjoying the party good life, going to bars, going to clubs, but mostly just throwing parties at my house, getting shit-faced. That's important to me. Meeting chicks, hooking up with chicks is important to me. And then also, like, believing that I'm God's gift to the earth is important to me, right? So those four things are important to me. And all my friends kind of hold those same values, and maybe that's why we were all friends, because we were all about that. They were friends that were going to my shows, or they're my bandmates, and you know, we would invite girls over all the time and stuff like that, and then we'd all get drunk. So when I grew out of that, I wasn't finding fulfillment in that lifestyle, and I started searching for something else. And that search, the big part of that search is it steered me away and made me realize there's another way of life than the victim mentality. That was the big thing. Once I made that shift from the victim mentality to responsibility for my actions and my life, when I would hang out with my friends that for many years of my life I admired, I just almost felt this like bad feeling instead of a good feeling, and I migrated away from them. So that's what I mean. Like, when we change as individuals or grow as individuals, does it change the nature of our relationships?
I don't believe, and I'm glad you brought those examples of what was important to you up, because I want to apply that to the idea of first of all, let me just give a quick overview of what the prisoner's dilemma is. And like I say, every relationship falls under the three major categories, and then there's subcategories, but every single relationship falls under one of these categories. You're in a relationship with someone, and the way that the give and receive, it basically is a dynamic to show that the give and receive aspect of every relationship. There is the tit for tat, meaning I'm going to help you if you help me. If you fail to help me, I'm going to reciprocate in kind. And that's our relationship. You know, when you're helping me, I'm helping you. When you flake on me, I flake on you. And that's how it goes. And then there's tit for tat forgiving. That's, and actually, if two people are in a tit for tat forgiving relationship, that is the most successful. That's where you'll have the most growth and resource success in the relationship. And that's when, if you have an excuse, I forgive you for it, and it's actually valid. You actually, circumstances prevented you from being able to make good on your part of the relationship, and you're the same way. You have a valid, actual, real excuse, and you really do want help. And then there's tit for tat deceiving. Tit for tat deceiving is where you help me out, and then when I go to help you out, I fail to do it deliberately and make up an excuse. And some people say, well, it's unconscious. It's unconscious that you received from them, and then you say you're going to do something to help them, but you find an excuse for why you couldn't, even though you actually could have. That's unconscious. I don't believe that. So tit for tat deceiving people end up extincting every relationship, but they also are the sole beneficiary. They have the highest sole beneficiary of every relationship. They are able to take more out of every relationship than any one individual on any spectrum. So those are the three categories. And what you were talking about, the things you were interested in, I don't believe that has really changed. The model for which you use to acquire the things that those bring into your life, I don't believe that is that was just the vehicle. You know, being a man that is competent or desirable as a mate, that should not change once you have a mate. Because trust me, if you're in a relationship where the person you're with is upset or intimidated by the fact that you are competent and desirable, that's not a good thing. You should always be that way, and your partner should be proud to be with someone who is competent and desirable by the opposite sex. Just like I would be very proud to be with a woman who is competent and desirable to other men. I am proud to be with that woman. So that shouldn't change. You talk about wanting to like you were like, hooking up with chicks. So, but the truth is that you want to appear competent and desirable as a man. So I don't think that changes. You wanted to be a rock star. You wanted to be in a position of notoriety. That probably hasn't changed. Being a rock star, maybe not, but developing your position in society and growing your position in society, I'm not sure that has changed. I don't know for a fact. But
no, I mean it hasn't changed, but there's different reasons now.
Sure, that's fine. And the reasons change the model by which you seek to achieve that.
Yeah.
And then feeling like you're God's gift to the world. I don't believe that a person who wants to impact the world in a positive way changes unless they were defeated and they've given up on that. But if you still want to impact the world in a positive way, and the reason how I'm tying the prisoner's dilemma into this is the same goes for a person where it's like, they fool me once, shame on you kind of thing, where let's say it's two kids, and there's a older brother and a younger sister, or a younger, well, I think it happens the opposite more, but we're just gonna do the opposite one to get rid of stereotypes. So it's an older brother and a younger sister, and actually in our family it did happen that way. So it went counter to how it normally happens, and the younger sister is drawing a picture. And she draws a picture and she sets one down. And then the older brother comes along and takes a crayon and scribbles all over the picture that she just drew. She's very proud of her picture. And she starts crying. She feels defeated. She feels that her work is going to be dismantled and worth nothing. And so it defeats her a little bit. And she cries and, she runs to mommy. Older brother was being mean to me. This is what he did. And mom says to the younger brother, that's you're hurting her, you're upsetting her, you're making her feel bad about herself. I won't do it again. And he doesn't scribble on her pictures anymore. But a few weeks later, she's building something with blocks. She's building a structure. And then she builds one structure and she goes to build another structure and he knocks her structure down. He did the exact same thing twice. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be the same example. And people who do this will argue, but I didn't do it. I didn't scribble on her pictures. No, you're defeating her. You're defeating her ability to feel that she can do something fruitful. And that's where, fool me twice, shame on you comes into play. Someone will do something with a specific example and they'll say, oh, I'm not going to do that example anymore, but I'm still going to figure out how to defeat you.
Well, it seems to me like someone with healthy self-respect would be like, peace out, dude. We're not cool.
Right.
Like, you're a jerk.
Well, that's okay. So that's where the tit for tat to Steven comes in. They'll make some kind of excuse. I'm really trying. I'm trying to be a better person. You just got to believe me. This is how I was treated when I was young, and I'm working on it. And I'm not going to scribble on your pictures. I'm not going to knock down your blocks, but I'll figure something else out. And I'm never going to quit trying to defeat you. That's where it comes into play. And you got to, anyone who defeats you at a core level, but they didn't do the exact same example that they did the first time, and tries to convince you that they're working on it and they're not going to do it again, dude. Yeah, like you're saying, peace out.
Yeah, and it's like, with friends, to me, something that is a couple things that are determining factors. We've already went over a couple of them, but we'll recap. You have to admire the person.
Yes.
Now, another one is you want to spend time with a friend, with a good friend. You want that interaction between them. So I was a certain way that I described. And as I grew and different things became important to me, like I realized that just hooking up with chicks all the time didn't make me happy. And I learned that I'm not extraordinarily special, but everyone has the same potential, and some people are gonna
everyone has their field of expertise.
Yeah. So I kind of like dropped a lot of the narcissistic qualities that I had. I remember I read a book that was like, nobody cares how much you talk. Like, just imagine yourself at a party and how much fun everyone's having. And then imagine them not at a party and they're going to have just as much fun. But anyways, so what happened is when I changed and I grew, I could no longer admire the people that held my old beliefs. And because I didn't admire them anymore, I didn't want to spend time with them anymore. Doesn't mean I didn't care about them. I just didn't want to spend time with them anymore. And at the same time, I started meeting new people in my life that had the same new beliefs as me. And I started nurturing those relationships, and that's when I got into your friend group. I became part of your friend group. And then eventually I moved out of that group too.
So did I. Not willingly, exactly. Not willingly, but not because I felt like I was outgrowing them.
Yeah. So I want to bring into the equation something that we've talked about before, I think. But there was a friend that turned out to be a toxic individual that you had. A friend that you had that turned out to be a toxic individual. I'm not going to say any names.
Sure.
When he was introduced into the friends group, he was doing to me everything that you just described. He was telling me, I just feel this like connection with you, bro. Like, I don't know what it is. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Right. And I told you I'm kind of naive, right? I didn't, like, my little beep beep doo boo doo, what you doing didn't go off, right?
Right.
I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, that's weird. But even though he was trying to feed me things in order for me to be his friend, he didn't meet any of the criteria that would gain my admiration.
Right.
And because he didn't do that, if he had have done that, maybe he didn't know what it took with me.
Well, he would have had to, not just that, but he would have had to have some evidence that the things that you're interested have had some kind of fruitful result in his life. Mm-hmm. You would have had to see that first, and then you might have been interested in the coaxing. Mm-hmm. You know.
And then now, at the point of my life that I'm in now, I have very, very few close friends. And the few close friends that I have are the ones that I admire and that I want to spend time with. And when I do spend time with them, I experience joy and I experience fellowship and I experience really beautiful things in life. And I have other friends that I don't admire, but I love and I care about. And I'm there for them whenever they call. And maybe once in a while I'll check in on them.
You know,
but I don't make any effort whatsoever to actually hang out with them because I don't admire them.
So,
can you love someone and not admire them? Can you care for someone and not admire them?
Okay, so if someone tells you that they love you, but their admiration for you ends with their proclamation of the way that they admire you, meaning the words that they say, be careful about it. The words have to match that. You'll know. If someone says that they love you, even if a friend, a good friend, I love you, man, and they want you to believe it, but their admiration for you ends with the things they say about you, and their actions don't actually match the words of admiration, then they don't love you. So you're saying, can you love someone that you don't admire? Admiring someone isn't saying you admire them. Admiring someone is the action of admiration, and that comes in your what you're willing to do for the person and what you have for them at your disposal.
I'll give you an example, and then you tell me. You can break it down. So I have a friend, and we've been friends for 25 years. And all the friends that we have had together will have nothing to do with them. I'm the only one left. And he has a very troubled life. He's been in and out of prison. And I would say that hanging out with him around town is almost dangerous because he's still volatile. And I
just reminded me of a story about him.
There's not a whole lot of things that I admire about him. But one thing that I admire about him is that when he puts his mind to something, he's going to get it done probably better than anybody I've ever met in my life.
Not just that, but the guy you're talking about, he's authentic.
And he's authentic.
He's authentic. He's in a troubled. He has a troubled life, but he knows that, and he's himself, and he knows that who he is just counter to a lot of the rules that society has, and he's authentic. That's you can admire that. You can admire that.
So maybe you do have at least a little bit of admiration,
I do,
but not. But see, I don't make a big effort. I don't make a big effort to hang out with him, and I'm not going to get into the reasons why, because that's a whole nother conversation. But I care about him very deeply, and I look at him as a brother. And when he needs something, I'm there, and when I need something, he's there.
Yeah.
But I don't have that desire to like push and nurture the relationship because we're on the other hand, we're so different in our ideology in so many ways.
Well, you don't have to. The groundwork for what your relationship has been set, and you use it for it being as built as it is. You don't need to build it anymore. And you have these non-physical structures. Trust is probably the biggest one. There are certain things you can trust him with, and you can count on it. The things that you can trust him in the ways that he'll be there for you, you can count on it. You don't have to cultivate that. It's there. You guys built that. It's you set the foundation. You put in the bricks and the mortar. It's set. As long as neither of you decide to take a piece of that structure out to use it for yourself, then that structure that non-physical structure will remain between you and be able to be used as long as you guys know each other.
Yeah, so I think to recap for this part, I think we do need to do another part on this because we haven't even talked about how to be a good friend and how to interact, how to recognize a good potential friendship when you see one, and recognize all the things that can go wrong in a friendship if you don't have the right behavior and actions. Yeah.
Also, there is something that we can touch on next time is that do you have to ask yourself, do you really want a good friend? Because there's something that a good friend will do that bothers a lot of people. We'll talk about that.
Okay. So before we go, I think that for now, one thing that we can focus on is identifying two things. We can do some introspection on ourselves to see in our different environments, in the workplace, in our social life, are we creating a fertile soil in order to meet friends and for those relationships to develop? And then secondly, are we taking advantage when we meet someone that meets the criteria with potential to be a friend? So you're vibing with them, you're admiring certain things about them, there's a positive, friendly environment. Are we taking advantage of that, or are we so jaded that we're just going to go back to the life that we're in right now?
Yeah, and I would love to see some comments and questions, maybe some feedback, things we can discuss and talk about off the bat when we come back.
Yeah, like this is just our perspective, and we really can't become any more knowledgeable at what we know unless we hear other perspectives or experience
Absolutely.
other things. So we really encourage this to be a big community conversation and not just a conversation between us two.
Absolutely.
So thank you for being here. We are going to do another part. In the next part, we are going to talk about what it means to be a good friend and how we should be behaving and what our expectations should be. And I'm also going to give something that I've been wanting to talk about a long time is how to absolutely guarantee that the person that you're interacting with will want more of you.
Oh wow, I want to hear about this one.
Yeah, and hopefully only good people use this because it is a tool, right?
Yeah, all these things are.
So thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. That's how we get reach and we can reach more people. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Take it easy, guys.
It's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life. Oh, it's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life. Oh, it's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life. Oh.